all for play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hi, villains. Welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. That intro ended very, very quickly there. It's not the normal intro we have. There's a story behind it, and I'm sure I'll bring it out in some other podcast, but we're not here to talk about my podcasting mishaps at the moment. We have the wonderful Tom Fenton from Get German Football News is on with us today, and obviously you're on, Tom, today to talk to us about the signing of Leon Bailey. So firstly, welcome to the podcast, Tom.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. Like I've done a couple of podcasts on Leon Bailey, basically just trying through the statistics and trying through what I've seen of him in my limited view that I've had. As I say, I have this theory whereby if I can look at statistics and look at 5 games, a game he scored in, a game that he performed statistically brilliantly in, 2 games from a previous year, and then another just game at random, I think I can get a fairly good idea of people, but obviously I might just get lucky and pick all the good games that somebody played. But no, it's great to have you on. It's great to have somebody who has an interest in, I suppose, Lords with regards to German football. But talk to us about Leon Bailey. We had a absolutely bonkers, and what on the outset looked like a bonkers and crazy press conference for Leon Bailey last night. I don't know if you've seen it, Tom. Did you? It was
I haven't yet. No, I think I need to. But yeah.
It's look. I suppose on the outset, I'll give you an idea. It's like this, like what we're doing right now, except probably even lower production value, if you can imagine. Imagine. But I suppose I come down on the side on the side that, you know, there's a lot of quarantine rules where he is. He's just come back from playing a game in Las Vegas. Las Vegas is one of the highest areas of growth of the coronavirus in the US at the moment. He's been 14 days in the US. Quarantine in Jamaica. There's going to be quarantine in the UK. They just couldn't get him to the UK to do his press conference. And then again, as I've said myself, I'm from a real rural place in Ireland. If I was signed for 30 million, if I was the most expensive transfer of my nation's history, I think I'd probably have my press conference in my local parish hall with all my, the people from my village around me as well. And, that could be inspiring for some Jamaican people to actually see that press conference for Leon Bailey. He'll get his razzmatazz when he comes to Birmingham. He will have cameras in his face for the next 5 years if he stays at Aston Villa. So, this is something nice. It's nice colloquial. It's nice village feel to it, I think. And, he celebrated his way in his patch with his people. And you got to respect that and find that endearing, I think, as well at the same time.
Absolutely. And Birmingham's a very razzmatazz city. I can tell you that firsthand. So he's in for a treat.
Wow. Yeah. He's got there's a bull ring. There's the bull ring.
Spaghetti Junction. Loads of... canals, more canals than Venice. What can I say?
Exactly. What can you say? Yeah, you're really selling it. No, I know. As I say, being an Aston Villa fan, obviously, I've been in Birmingham my fair share of times, and I actually never get the whole "there's nothing in Birmingham" thing. That a lot of other fans of other clubs tell me. I love going to Birmingham. It's a great spot. You'll put it this way, you'll find something to do if you want to be in the place you're in, and that's the way I always see it as well. But less about this isn't the Lonely Planet guide to Birmingham. It very nearly turned into it, or to Jamaica for that point of view. Talk to me about Leon Bailey. Bit of a mercurial player is what we're getting, is the feeling that he's going to fit into this system. But talk to us about what his time in Germany has been like, I suppose, first, Tom.
Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned the 5 games because I think if you watch those, even just a couple of games of his, you'll get a real feel for why people love Leon Bailey and why people are simultaneously so frustrated by Leon Bailey, because on his day, he was one of the best players in the Bundesliga. He could turn it on. He's got pace to burn, eye for a goal. He's a good crosser of the ball. His passing is excellent. Link-up play is good. So it's all there. It's always been there since he moved from Belgium as a very young player, and I think he never really intended to stay in Germany for this long. I think that big move to a United or to a Bayern Munich was always his intention eventually. Yeah. And so I guess his has been a story in some ways of frustration when things are just going right. He's very much been a player who will go through months of superb form, and then out of nowhere he'll just suddenly fall off and lose a bit of form and lose his place in the side, because Bayer Leverkusen have got a lot of attacking, or they did. They still do to an extent without Kai Havertz and so on. But they've always had plenty of good players in wide areas, and he's always had to compete for his place. So yeah, I think he's one of those players that's always been on the verge of a big move, in my opinion, because the talent has been there from a very early age, and everyone's known that. And again, everyone's known that in Germany, and it did always seem as if he'd get a big move abroad. I think he finally has. I'm not entirely sure if many would have predicted Villa or Everton would be the two teams that were vying for him a couple of years ago. But I think it's a perfect move for this time in his career, because again, I think last season towards the end, he finally put together a string of performances that you can kind of say, okay, this is the consistency we've always wanted over these past couple of years.
And that was going to be my first question. My next question to you is, last year, I think it's fair to say last year was either his coming of age year or it was an outlier year for him. What do you think? Is it a coming of age year? Because he played his most minutes, I suppose, last year. And does that have an effect? Is he a kind of a guy that needs to, for all his sparkle and his speed and his flicks and tricks and everything like that, is he a guy that needs to develop into a system, or is he, or is he just a complete maverick that blows hot and cold if and when the game depends on it?
I think for the first couple of years, he was definitely the second. He was more in that maverick category. And that perhaps is why when there's been a succession of new managers coming in at Bayer Leverkusen, and again, having a very good period initially, and then it kind of tails off towards the end. Peter Bosz is the best example of that. He nearly got them to the Champions League and it just didn't quite work out. And I think he suffered because of that. And managers haven't really, because he's so inconsistent, managers haven't really known where to use him, how to deploy him. Some have tried to play with a back five, and therefore you need wing backs rather than out and out wingers or inverted wingers. So I think that's been a real issue of his, is that managers haven't really known how to get the very best out of him consistently. And last season was probably, well, like you said, the most amount of minutes, good stats in terms of goals and assists, and he's man of the match awards and that kind of thing. So I think it really was a coming of age year and a year of consistency. And again, the first time really that we've seen him able to play on the left or the right without a manager really tinkering to an insane degree, or trying to move him from a position he's comfortable in to a wing back role or to a central role. And again, hopefully with Villa that works out well, because naturally there's going to be a couple of places in wide positions available at Villa, and hopefully he can slot in, maybe not to the same extent as the man who was previously on the left-hand side of Villa, but I think he could certainly do a job, and he just needs to nail down a position in the team. And I think he needs a manager who could really make him feel important tactically, rather than just a bit of a live wire who can do what he pleases. He needs that kind of, if you can turn him into a functional player and give him that tactical discipline, I think he's a really, really good asset, and he can fly in the Premier League, in my opinion.
Excellent, yeah, and very well done. Before we came on the podcast, we said we were going to give Leon Bailey his due and not let the obvious things that are going on around the club and around a certain player. It's not. I've put X's over Jack here behind me. It's not because I don't want him or don't like him. It's to remind me not to continuously talk about him. And it's right in my eye line here, so I hope people don't take that as a slight at what's done. But myself and Tom were just talking about it before we came on, and it's just to remind me not to continually talk about Jack Grealish, because look, I think a lot of the Villa fan base are at risk of that, of the Leon Bailey thing being after the Lord Mayor's party. I think that's what the phrase is, that it's something that nobody actually fully appreciates, really remembers, really recognizes as quite a very big high profile move for this club, considering where we were 3 years ago. And I think it's only fair that we would give him his due on probably what would have to be the happiest day of his life, considering it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's the most expensive Jamaican player of all time. So it's this is fantastic for him, and it's also the club are probably jumping through hoops with his signing. Obviously, everything else is probably not to their taste, but the Leon Bailey piece is something we're going to talk about. And look, I presume we will probably touch on some comparisons with the man who previously occupied the left, or to this day still does occupy the left wing. He hasn't. The fat lady hasn't sung yet. But you mentioned somebody about managers, and that's really fascinating, because you mentioned Peter Bosz, and obviously people know about his tactical and what he's a very demanding manager, and he's very good tactically. And I think I want you to kind of start on maybe a discussion of maybe why he did and why he fell into and out of favor with Peter Bosz. But like, because I want to talk about the complete subset of managers that he's had, because when he first came into Leverkusen, he had a brilliant year as well. That was his second best statistical year. Well, 17-18, I think it was, when he was 19 years of age. He scored. I'm actually just going to look it up here. He scored 9 goals and had 6 assists. So pretty similar output to what he had this year. Mm-hmm. What was the difference between that year in 17-18 and 20 and 21? But what was the difference between those years and the 2 years in between? Was it specifically managerial and what those managers wanted him to do?
I think that definitely factors into it. But I think you also have to look at perhaps his head being turned slightly. I think we've seen it perhaps with Jadon Sancho in the Bundesliga last season, whereby, you have a real good breakout year in the Bundesliga. And all of a sudden, I think there was the expectation for Bailey that all these big clubs would come in. I mean, in 2018, 2019, if you would have said that Bailey would end up at Villa, given where Villa were a couple of years ago and where Bailey was a couple of years ago, it would have been inconceivable, because he was being linked with every major club in Europe at that point. And so it's kind of aligned nicely for both parties, I think, in the here and now. But again, it's I think it's one of those things where he came to Germany and almost immediately he was on pace, and he looked really good. Looked like a live wire. He was so young that you thought, okay, he's very raw in some regards, but you can build on that and work on that. And then I think he just stumbled a bit in terms of perhaps not really wanting to kind of buy into the Bayer project anymore, when you had managers who, like you say, with Peter Bosz and others, who really needed tactically disciplined players who would fit into their system, who would get them to where they want to be in terms of a long-term vision. I think someone like Kai Havertz brought a lot more into that philosophy than maybe a player like Leon Bailey did. And again, there was always competitiveness too. Moussa Diaby came in a couple of years back, and he's looked really good at times. Again, a bit like Bailey, he blows hot and cold, but on his day, he can be exceptional. So I think that there's various reasons for that. And, a few managers have tried to rotate the squad a lot more as well. But I do think a big part of it was just he needed to have a bit of a realization that you can't just have one good season in the Bundesliga and then get your move to Bayern Munich or to Manchester United or whoever. Yes, you need to really put together a string of good seasons, and you need to show that you're more than just raw talent and potential, and that there's something to work with there for a coach. And I think this season that finally clicked, and he realised that, because he's got his head down, he's worked really hard, got plenty of minutes, and has earned his move after all these years. And I think the fact that a club didn't pay the money that Villa have now for so many years is perhaps indicative of that slight suspicion that he maybe isn't a team player, or that he doesn't work in certain systems. But last season, maybe, I think, proved to many that he can, and that he can get his head down. And again, I think it's just reward for a very good season that's been a long time coming.
Yeah. And that's kind of good. That's kind of what I was kind of nearly hoping in a way that you would say, because when you look at it from the outside in, you look at the statistics of it, you always have that question, maybe, and it's okay if the answer is maybe his head was turned, but you know what happened? He kind of kicked himself up the arse, and he got himself back in gear again, and he worked hard, and he's gotten his move. Like, I think that fans, it's probably because it's raw with me at the moment, given what the club is going through at the moment, that I don't think fans would really mind in 99% of situations, probably not the one we're going through at the moment. But if a player does well for the club and moves on at the end of the year, they move on with a club's blessing, and maybe that's something that has happened here. And yes, look, if he thinks he's good enough to play for Real Madrid in 4 or 5 years' time, or 3 or 4 years' time, if his dad or his stepdad, who's his agent, thinks that as well, that's fine. That means we get a really good player for 4 years, and we get to, hopefully build a squad around him for 4 years. And that's usually what a manager's window is anyway. And, after that, it's usually rebuild time, so it's especially for a club like Aston Villa. So that's me trying to be as rational as I possibly can, given the current state of Aston Villa Twitter and Aston Villa Football Club. I really want to get more into more emotional speeches about the whole situation, but I think that that's a fair enough assessment of potentially what's happened here. Now, you mentioned that maybe he wasn't a team player. how, like, my biggest thing that I saw is that he's like a guy who's only learned that you can run fast in two directions, as in you can run fast back towards your goals, or you can run fast towards the opposition's goals.
Yeah.
Is that just me oversimplifying it, or like, as in he's got latent pace, but is it that he just didn't want to be defensive, or that he just was never shown as a kid how to play a defensive structure?
I think when he first arrived, he just hadn't been shown, and then perhaps it was a case of after that first season, he's thinking, well, I don't even need to learn these things that these managers try and teach me, because I'll be at the big clubs in a year or two's time. Naturally, that didn't happen, and maybe that's part of the reason why it didn't happen. But he certainly had managers who have had that tactical nous and would have wanted to incorporate that into his game. Again, like trying to get him to play at wing back. I mean, I think he would be an exceptional wing back for some teams if he had that tactical discipline, because his pace is great, and he can put in a shift when he wants to. It's just more often than not he can just sort of drift out of games if it's not going his way, and or again historically he could. And I think last season was the first kind of indication that he's growing out of that phase and is maturing as a player now. So it's an interesting one. I do think it's more a case of him just kind of, I don't know, just thinking he'd already made it in that sense. Because he certainly can play both ways, and for Aston Villa he's going to have to. I mean, he's not going to have a choice. I don't think they'll allow him to just be a passenger on the pitch. But for Bayer Leverkusen, it was always a trade-off, because I think there's an acceptance with what they do, similar to Dortmund, whereby they bring in these young players for a couple of years, they develop them and sell them on, and there is often that implication that, okay, they may not always give us the best work rate, and they probably will force their way out of the club eventually, but we'll get a couple of good years out of them. And I think other players bought into that more than perhaps Leon Bailey did. Like a couple of years before Bailey got there, you had Arturo Vidal, yes, who took Bayer Leverkusen to a new level while he was there. Emre Can as well came to Liverpool afterwards, and so they had a model of doing this for many years. And I think maybe Bailey just kind of, I don't know if he believed his own hype or what, but for whatever reason, there were a couple of more barren years, and it's taken until now for him to maybe drop those aspects of his game and really become more of a rounded footballer. But it's hard to say really, because you never know what's going on in a player's head and what his agent has said or whatever. But I think something did click last season in terms of upping the work rate and realizing what he could grow into as a player.
We've had a press conference, as I mentioned before, and we also have had a reaction from Dean Smith, albeit brief reaction from Dean Smith. And what was really interesting to me was that Dean Smith referred to him as a striker. You've referred to him as a winger, a left winger, right winger, or a left wing back, right wing back. Is probably the best thing to do with him, stick him up top and let him be a maverick up there and not have to depend on him to defend? Do you think he has a full rounded skill set to be able to be, I'm not saying like a centre forward, but if you're familiar with the way Aston Villa played last year, like maybe an Ollie Watkins, somebody who was able to play the channels and come up with 10 goals a season, 15 goals a season. Do you think he's got that in his locker if needed?
I think if needed, for me, it wouldn't be the optimum position you play him in, because I think he's too good of a crosser of a ball, and he cuts inside beautifully as well. Like again, if you play him on the opposite side, if you play him on the right, for instance, he'll cut inside and use the left foot, and I think that's a really good asset, or it could be for Villa. I don't know if he has maybe the physical presence to be. I know you don't mean like an out-and-out striker, but yes, even to play centrally, I think maybe he needs a bit more of that. And again, he's played there so scarcely for Bayer that it would take him a while to learn that, I think, because he predominantly just plays on the wing. Either wing, really. He's comfortable on both, but centrally, he's never really been an option. I mean, you got to think of during the course of his time there, there's always either been Kai Havertz or recently Florian Wirtz, who is a natural number 10, plays central. Yeah, phenomenal footballer.
What a player.
And again, Havertz also played as a false nine at times. So there's never really been a chance for him to play that central role. And Patrick Schick as well has been at the club too. So it might just be a case of there's never really been a chance for him to play that. I think he could grow into it because his goal output, when he gets regular minutes, is pretty good. He's got a good strike of the ball, particularly from long range. Does he have the movement to kind of merit that? Again, I think it would need to be taught. But it's an exciting option to have. I mean, if you had a situation like I remember when Wesley got injured the season before last,
yes.
and you had that period without, exactly. And I think in that kind of scenario, he could do a job, absolutely, But I think really he's being brought in as a winger predominantly. If I was to guess, I mean, I'm not sure why he said that at the press conference, but I guess it's to kind of give the fans a bit more of an idea of how he could be used, and that he isn't just one dimensional and whatever. But I mean, it's an interesting remark.
Tom, I know what you want to say. You want to say it's to give the fans that bit of hope that Grealish was staying because he called him a striker, not a left winger, so that the whole rumor mill doesn't go into absolute meltdown. That's look. As I said, from what I've seen, maybe they can turn him into maybe like that second striker role. Maybe they can give him just that free roll up where Watkins does all the work. He does all the, the fancy stuff and is that maverick, that unpredictable maverick. Dean Smith loves to play with a maverick in his team. Bertrand Traore on the other side is just like literally the night when the ball comes to Bertrand Traore, that's when he decides what he's going to do with it. He has no idea what he's going to do with the ball from any second to the next, and it's beautiful to watch at times. It's frustrating at others. So it was just interesting. I think that one of the two of them will move into a more potentially will rotate between a more central role as a striker, provided we don't go out and spend money on a striker before the start of the season, which is only 10 days away, which makes me believe we won't. Leon Bailey, getting back to Leon Bailey as well there. Who would you equate him to in the Premier League? Because I found this one difficult, and the reason I found it difficult was I kept on falling on he's a poor man's Raheem Sterling.
That's what I was going to say first. I'm not even sure I'd say poor man's, but maybe not quite at the same level, not yet anyway. But in terms of what he possesses, very, very similar, similar stature as well. And again, maybe like Sterling could also play centrally because of the assets he has. And I would argue he's a better finisher than Sterling in terms of just like he's wasteful at times in a similar sense, but he's got like a clinical edge, and he can be very, very effective in terms of goal scoring when he's really on it. Whereas I think Sterling, he'll score one for every 3 or 4 that he misses. So I would say Bailey has more potential in terms of goal scoring. And I can't really say that because Sterling's had some phenomenal stats over the years, but just in terms of, I think he could become a real like consistent goal scorer.
Good. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think both from Jamaican born as well, so I actually found myself going like scratching my head, and that's why I found it difficult, because I was going, am I just stereotyping both of these two people because I know both of them are of Jamaican heritage, and they're both the same build, they're both really fast, they've got great feet, they've both broke onto the scene at a young age. I was wondering, was my mind playing tricks on me, just equating everything outside of football to what they potentially were like inside of football? So I'm glad to think that you have the same kind of feeling as that as well. And look, if we get a second Raheem Sterling out of in the league, well then Aston Villa will be all the better for it.
Sorry, go on.
No, go on, absolutely. No,
just to quickly jump on that, and I think much like Sterling, he will frustrate you at times, and again he'll deliver brilliance at times. He'll be one of those, particularly initially. I don't think he's going to come in and be completely settled and be like in sync with everybody straight away. But much like Sterling, he's going to be hot and cold. There's going to be a lot of good moments, and maybe look much like when Sterling was at Liverpool, he will play centrally at times and do a job as Sterling did back then. So there's a lot of similarities because they can play anywhere along that front four. Wide centrally, they've got the ability to do either. So I think it's a pretty apt comparison if you have to make one.
Good, excellent. I hate comparing him to a Man City player because I know there's people going to be roaring at their at their screens or at their phones, going, "Oh, great, Villa are just getting the new Raheem Sterling. In 5 years' time, Sterling will be ready to hang up his boots, and City are just going to buy him from us again for 100 million." Yeah, we're in that mode, and I'm very much in that mindset as well. So. Yeah, but I just genuinely couldn't think of anybody else. I think in the league that he was that similar to. But talking about, I am going to mention kind of small bit of an elephant in the room, and the reason I am going to do it is because I think it is quite poignant, you being a German football aficionado, to speak about maybe what Man City are attempting to do now with buying Jack Grealish, potentially buying Harry Kane. It smacks of Bayern Munich, but hoovering up all the decent talent in the league, and this should be terrifying for every English football fan. It should be terrifying, even Man City fans, because like, what's the difference between doing it now or doing it when the European Super League was created for those 3 or 4 days and is now no longer there? You know, this is a worrying trend. The financial fair play hang-ups that are still there, that are unanswered, that are potentially were answered incorrectly or not truthfully in certain aspects. Like the Bundesliga, and this is going back on an answer you gave, the Bundesliga kind of just gets on with it and develops players and goes, yeah, look, I'll send them on to Bayern Munich, or I'll send them on to this club, or I'll send them on to that club. And teams like Leverkusen just get on with it and they develop more talent. Do you think that potentially, and I hate even saying this, that potentially the English football fan needs to get their head around that the league is potentially going that way? I don't want to think it. I want to fight that until the day I die.
Yeah.
But it's just when you said that about Leverkusen and even Dortmund, the likes of Dortmund, you know, with everything that's going on at the moment, maybe that's the way the league is going.
I think sadly that's the case, and
I didn't want you to say that.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's one of the reasons why I think me and many other German football fans were first swayed to that league, because you know, of course there are issues, and the issues that you have in the Bundesliga is that Bayern often will get these players for like virtually nothing. But a lot of the times these players would just run out their contracts, and Bayern picks them up on a free or for like 20 million or something. So that's a whole separate issue. But I think in terms of seeing the money and how it's polluted the Premier League, I think Germany does stand in stark contrast, and it's just the way things are. If you're Dortmund, if you're Bayern, if you're Schalke, well, even more so with Schalke, but you're never going to have the funds to compete with Bayern Munich. Even Bayern Munich haven't got the funds to compete with Man City. And so I think for City, the real issue you've got, you know, from an outsider looking in at the Premier League, is that all of Man City's competitors, bar maybe Manchester United, are having to be shrewd financially. They can't just go out and gazump teams and hoover up all the talent. Liverpool are having to sell players before they can buy. Arsenal have spent a bit of money, but they're still limited in so many ways. Chelsea, of course, trying to get Lukaku, but they're going to have to use players in the make weight. I don't think there's any club, bar City, that could just go out and spend that kind of money without even really thinking about it. And I think it is a bad sign for the way the league's heading in. And, teams are going to have to get creative with how they compete with that. We saw what Liverpool did. You know, they tried a very clever strategy in terms of the way they recruited. And, it can work for so long. But up against this just machine that is City, a financial machine that can just endlessly pump money in, there's a finite amount of time that lasts for as well. And I think we'll see that this season. I can't really see many teams getting close to City if they get these two deals over the line, which it looks like they will, at least one of them. So I think it is a worrying trend. And but the one thing Villa can do is they can maybe do what Southampton did many years ago, where you essentially you become like the test club for the bigger clubs. So if you look at what Southampton did, where they bring in a Mane or a Van Dijk or a player like that, who the big six aren't really sure about yet. So they'll let a Southampton or a Villa get that player first, use that as a testing ground to see can they cope in the Premier League, and then they go and buy them. But and while that's a bleak analysis, yeah, it is. But there can be many good years of getting Villa close to where they want to be in terms of getting into Europe again. And it's not a nice place for the rest of the Premier League to be in. But there are ways around it that I think can keep it competitive, or at least I hope they can, because I think it is going to turn a lot more fans off if this just continues. And my hope is that once City get that elusive Champions League, they kind of take a back step a bit. That's my hope. Maybe it's deluded, but I think it's all the rest of the fans have to kind of cling to, is that it's not going to be forever, and that teams can just be a bit more creative with how they compete with Man City.
And my hope in the short term is that Marvelous Nakamba 2 Foot Jack just puts him out like for 4 weeks. just nothing serious. Like, I'm not wishing ill on anyone. Just a niggle for maybe means he doesn't pass his medical, and then everything is happy in the world again. That's what my short term goal is.
I can't condone that, I'm afraid.
No, I do jest. I only joke
Yeah.
on that one. I am only joking. But look. It's that's a kind of a bleak way to end the podcast. So just bring us back to a small bit of positivity with regards to I suppose to Leon Bailey. What would be like he I think the Premier League is going to be perfectly suited to him because he's pace power, he's tricks, he's flicks, and he takes a shot from any angle at any time. What obviously we take away the pace aspect from his game. What do you think Aston Villa fans are going to be at the end of the season saying, "Wow, that's what I associate with Leon Bailey"?
I think just magic moments. Ooh.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you still see me? Sorry,
I can.
Computer's done something strange. Sorry about that.
You're all good.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry. Yeah, I think magic moments, individual moments of brilliance. Again, there will be frustrations, and I think the first couple of months will be a bedding in period. But he's such a live wire, and he's such a maverick. And I think he's just going to, at least in the short term, there's going to be glimpses of the player everyone thinks he can be, and hopefully will progress into. I can just see electrifying moments that gets, hopefully when fans are back, gets the fans off of their seats, and it really just shows that there is life after Grealish, because it's going to feel bleak for a while at Villa, and naturally so. He's such a talismanic leader, and it's so hard to replace that. But this is the kind of player you need, someone who makes football watchable, and is the reason why all of us watch it, because he's going to do things that amaze. And again, my hope is that it works out for him. This is what he's been working for all these years, in terms of this is the move he's always wanted after Bayer. And so this is my hope, is that now he really kicks on, and now he really shows the player that again has been threatening to become all of these years. So I think plenty of excitement. I'm hoping plenty of goals too. And yeah, just a player who can go on and do really, really good things, and hopefully take Villa to new heights, because I think, it'd be great for the Premier League just to have Villa back as a major player again. So
absolutely,
that's my hope. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, that's put me in better form. That's put me in better form to hear that, because I think that too. I just, this is into a new era within Aston Villa Football Club, and now we need to find our new heroes. And Leon Bailey, I hope, can be that new hero, or one of those new heroes as we progress into the new season. Tom, thank you so much for popping on. You've been so accommodating, and thanks so much for popping for all your insight. And if we sign anybody from the Bundesliga again, you'll be definitely the first person I chat to on it, because it's great. It's great to have somebody that that watches it week in, week out, and day in, day out, even, I suppose, realistically, if we were to be honest about it, and to get your opinions on it. And I, for one, am very much so looking forward to Leon Bailey and having that little bit of a sparkler within the team as well, because every team needs that, especially if you are going to climb the leagues. So thank you very, very much for your time. Do you want to plug anything you have coming out at the moment, or where can the guys find you? I'm sure there's people are going to be, there are people out there that are enthralled with German football news and so on like that. Is there anywhere?
I just find me on Twitter. I can see the link at the bottom, so you can find me on there, and hopefully lots to come. I get German football news this season. As we get close to the season, we'll do more podcasts and that kind of thing. So, yep, if you're interested in German football, then check out our podcast. And thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely, no problem. Anytime. So that's going to do it for us today, guys. I don't know when you're going to be listening to this podcast. Hopefully it's something that takes your mind off the ongoings that are going on at the moment. Hopefully it's we've probably spoken about that person who plays on the left wing at the moment. Hopefully it never transpires, and something happens. He has a change of heart, and we end up having both Leon Bailey and Jack Grealish in the team at the same time. But it's all left to be written. Anything that breaks in the meantime, we will be back with another podcast. Thanks very much to everybody who listens. I really appreciate everything you do for the pod. We're far exceeding anything myself and Paddy ever thought that we would do with this podcast. And it's all because of you guys. Really, really appreciate it. Once again, thanks to Tom. You can catch him at Tom Fenton 11, and you can catch get German football news at @GGFN_. That's it from me. You can catch me on at Love McGrath Pod. And all that's left to say until the next time, which could very well be later on this evening, is up the Villa.